All right. We'll see if this works. In theory, we should be live right now for the world premiere of part 2 of Princess Caraboo. Hello, beautiful people. I'm Brian Brushwood, joined as always by the inimitable. Here, I'm gonna move this over. I can't. Sorry, you're gonna have to be over there, Justin Robert Young. There's no two ways about it. We got all kinds of stuff that's gone kookaburra. We'll see. First of all, we don't have chat from YouTube just yet, so we'll see if you guys are able to see us. Are we live? I'll see if we can fix that on there. And then, but we're definitely live on the twitch.tv/nightattack stream. If you're new here, World's Greatest Con. It's the best podcast I've ever been part of. Conceived of by Justin Robert Young. Co-created and executed by the two of us. We're getting better about releasing episodes.
I don't know. I was conceived of by you. It was conceived of. It was co-conceived.
Well, you were the initiating force.
I said, hey, I got an idea. What if we did a thing like this? And then you were like, I asked you what it would be. So literally, it was created by you. You should be sole creator.
No. Okay. Well, now we're gonna get into kicking the credit can.
You were like, oh, it'd be called the world's greatest con. I didn't come up with that. That was all you.
Oh no. You know what? Oh yeah, as Adam points out, it often takes two to conceive.
It often does.
It often does. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, guys. We've got a new episode of Princess Caraboo. Don't worry if you have.
Considering how slow I work, it's not odd that it takes 9 months for something to come out.
It takes 2 and 9 months. I like that. We're going to listen to part 2 of Princess Caraboo. We're going to pause and give commentary when appropriate. If you missed part 1, we'll play it at some point. We'll do a listen party. But essentially, Justin, it says Justin's very quiet. Let me hear you.
Hey, what's up?
Okay, there you go. That's good.
What's going on?
Okay, now you're quiet
do
again.
You want to just do a real quick recap of the story?
Yeah, I do. Princess Caraboo, in early 1800s England, a mysterious woman shows up speaking gibberish and
a foreign language
that nobody could recognize. And what emerges is it's very clear. Somebody comes up. They have basically a contest. Everybody comes in trying to figure out what language she's talking, and eventually someone recognizes the language and says, she's a princess. Her name is Princess Caraboo. She comes from a faraway, distant land. And then the tales get more interesting from there. She becomes a curiosity among all of the academic elites who all try to figure out exactly where this is from. Eventually, her mentor, Elizabeth Worrell, confronts her and says,
her patron, yeah. She becomes famous, and people start talking about her.
Yep.
And that's bad for her, because somebody who knows that she's just a random lady says, I know that random lady.
Yeah.
And they go to her patron, the woman who not only took her in, but was paying for everything. Caraboo had run away multiple times, and Elizabeth Worrell chased after her because she was afraid for the well-being of this wayward young princess who, according to her own story, had been kidnapped from her home island in the Pacific, so far away, and leapt from the bondage of a pirate kidnapper and swam to shore in Bristol, England. And so she was like, oh my God, this woman is confused. She was eccentric. She would pray and swim naked, and she knew how to fire a bow and arrow. Very odd stuff. And then all of a sudden they find out, oh no, she's just a lady from up the road in Devonshire. And that's where we ended episode 1,
which is a pretty big reveal, because it's like, a lot of people were snowed up until that point, and boy, is she penned in. She also tried to run away a few times.
She did.
Kept coming back. And, here we go.
She came back once. If I'm going to do that, can I be closer?
Yes. Here? I had to relog in that camera back to
There we go.
the thing.
She ran away twice or three times. She came back a few times, and then one of them she just legit ran away, and she was chased down by Elizabeth Worrell down a few towns down the road. But yeah, eventually the truth comes out. And as we last left, podcast listeners, the only two people who know the truth are Elizabeth Worrell and Caraboo, right there in that moment where Worrell has put the facts in front of her and Caraboo has confessed, dropping the act, admitting she not only speaks English, but she sounds like Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
And that's what the Devonshire accent. Boil them, mash them, put them in a stew. That's what the Devonshire accent is.
Oh, look at this. Hold on. Look at this. I had this previous preset. We got all kinds of ways to fix this. There we go. And then there you are. There you are, sir. There we both are. And now we can listen. Okay, so here's the game plan. As we do on these, we're gonna listen and provide commentary when appropriate. So where we're at is we ended on a cliffhanger because what's she gonna do with this con lady? And this is how we begin.
This is World's Greatest Con. I'm Brian Brushwood.
We're back there. Right there in that room, right when everything's come undone. Mary Baker, a poor girl from Devonshire, has just fallen. Fallen from her feet to her knees, fallen several rungs of the social ladder, and most importantly, fallen out of favor with quite possibly the one woman who actually loved her. Elizabeth Worrell, who up until this point battled every doubter to Caraboo's authenticity, not only just revealed that she knows the truth, but that she shut all of the doors to escape. In this moment, this beautiful young girl relents.
Don't cast me off. Don't send me back to my parents.
Princess Caraboo dies, and Mary is revealed. Elizabeth, the one woman who would never let her go, stands totally composed. But internally, she's a tempest, a firestorm, infinitely calculating the consequences. Her family reputation, the only coin of the realm that mattered to her, is ruined. History has a funny way of dealing with reputations. We all know the stories, the rise, the fall, the rise again of a legend. You see it everywhere, even, of all places, in the humble leech. We start at the beginnings of medicine itself, ancient Egypt, and leeches are already part of the conversation. Ancient doctors believed all your bad stuff could be removed from the body by removing the blood. Possessed by invisible forces? Buddy, have I got a worm for you. Next up, the Greeks arrive. Hippocrates and later Galen popularized the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Health is defined as balance between them. Illness is imbalance. And there's only one way to give your blood levels a tune-up: your old friend the leech. And by the 19th century, leeches are a full-blown industry. In the 1830s, tens of millions of leeches are consumed per year. A creature from a pond becomes a global commodity. Collectors wade into marshes. Doctors prescribe them. Countries import them. Leech jars become medical equipment. A leech industrial complex thrives until it dies. The whole bloodletting industry collapses. Leeches become synonymous with backward medicine. Case closed, right? The leech sitting there at the end of the bar. Tough business, medicine, drinks. It's blood. Spoiler. But in the late 20th century, reconstructive microsurgeons have a problem. You see, when reattaching body parts, surgeons can often reconnect the arteries easier than they can reconnect the tiny veins. That reattached tissue, it has a problem. Literally, too much blood. And it turns out medicinal leeches can create temporary venous outflow until new drainage develops. And they're still used today. In fact, papers are still coming out about their efficacy. Funny how reputations work. Discovered in ancient Egypt, popularized in France, discredited throughout Europe, then redeemed in England, only to make its way right here to America. We think of reputations as a permanent record, but they're not really. They're just a gathering of current opinions. And on a long enough timeline, they change more than you think. Which brings us back to our battle of reputations. Princess Caraboo. How did she build hers at the expense of Elizabeth Warrel's? There's just something about this story. Not the biggest heist, but a grand humiliation with one girl at the center of it that has left oh so many of us in disagreement to this very day. This is the story of financial ruin, familial estrangement, prostitutes, barbaric medicine, and the voice of none other than God. Cons don't fool us because we're stupid. They fool us because we're human. And the true tale of how Mary Baker became Princess Caraboo might just be the world's greatest con. Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things on that stuff. First of all, the leech thing will make sense later, but I thought
good
that
knowledge.
that was a pretty good transition to go from that moment to let's talk about leeches. Anyway, that was just a story about leeches that I'm sure will have no bearing on anything going forward from here.
Yeah, I think that initially became, I mean, we've kind of built part of the DNA of the show is that you learn a little bit about a lot. One of the things that I think is really important about any kind of Brian Brushwood branded content is like the factoid that you can take away from something. I think that that's like a really important part of our modern culture. And if there's ever just like a thing that you just repeat and you're like, oh, I got it from a podcast, it's like that's the kind of stuff that that we want to do. And I thought that was a fun thing, the idea that like, oh, like leeches are still very common in medicine and that it's now backwards to think that leeches are backwards, despite the fact that we think of leeches as backwards. But
yeah, I've had different phrases for it, like aha, dopamine hits, takeaways, but like even all of hacking the system was my goal, really. And now, through the lens of nowadays, it's astonishing how much of hacking the system chops up into very neat 60-second shorts. And that was by design, because going in, I was like, I want this to be an IV drip of, oh crap, that's why that thing is that way.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't unknow those things. And so in this case, I guess that's a big part of the DNA of what we do is we try to have everything serve dual purpose, where this does give you dopamine hits. It has something to do with reputations. And then there's a third kind of beneath the surface reason, as
maybe,
Joey
I don't know.
666
I don't know.
Sniffing out.
I don't know. Maybe that's the case. We'll have to listen. I haven't listened to the full episode yet.
Well, let's take a listen.
I'm you, the listener, and I haven't listened to the full thing yet.
Well, who knows? That was a good, strong opening. 5 minutes. 5 minutes on the nose. Not bad. Heads up, gang. There's a phrase that I want you to keep an eye out for. You're going to catch it in the media a lot over the next few years. And that phrase is social engineering. I first heard the phrase 20 years ago, and it became the keystone of my work ever since then. That was the moment that I realized that the techniques of magic could be used to manipulate other people, either for good or for ill. Now it's making headlines in the news because guess what? The bad guys have robots. And the number one way that businesses are falling for outside scams is through social engineering. I've got a lecture I've worked on for 20 years about this called Social Engineering 101, How to Scam Your Way into Anything. I've done it for TEDx Talks, international cybersecurity conferences, and the highest levels of government law enforcement. And now I'd like to do it for you. To learn more about this fun, funny, and interactive lecture, and most importantly, the safety-minded message underneath it, head on over to scampocalypse.com.
Don't go there
you'll
for
be able to learn about the
hour or
talk, see the
so.
tour
I gotta-
schedule, and most importantly,
set it
sign
up.
up on the email list or book a one-on-one session between the two of us so I can make your team scam-proof.
Right now, go
Don't,
right
not
now.
right now.
Rate it on Yelp right now.
Judge it entirely on
Judge
its
it.
non-existence.
What do you do with someone who humiliated you? Elizabeth knows of 3 easy paths. Behind door number 1, jail. Yes, let's just throw Mary in jail. Let her rot in there. On the other hand, there's deportation to the prison colony of Australia. This one's becoming more popular these days, as malcontents are being removed from the equation so that Britain can hope to avoid a repeat of the unpleasantness in revolutionary France. Of course, there's always a solution that's a bit more permanent: death. Because at this point in time, England is still under the so-called Bloody Code, a code in which you could be hanged in public for over 200 crimes. Which to choose? Meanwhile, inside Mary's head, she has to be thinking of everything she didn't do. She was no revolutionary. She didn't set out to embarrass anyone. She didn't even ask to get paid. All Mary wanted was one thing: for Elizabeth to be like everyone else. Why did she have to care? Why couldn't Elizabeth just leave her alone? No, instead, Elizabeth had to be the only one who didn't do that, the only one who gave Mary everything she ever wanted, including the portrait that she thought would be finished today. But I guess now that Caraboo's gone and Mary's the only one here, that's out. Just Mary. She's looking to Elizabeth and begging for mercy. This moment of decision will enrapture everyone in England and live on in history. And just like you can't control the gossip surrounding a story like this, you also can't control that drive to find the truth. So in the months after this moment, this fulcrum, reporters, academics, and workaday schlubs all try to determine who was the real Princess Caraboo. And that means finding out who is the real Mary Baker. What kind of truth can you expect from a known liar? In the months that follow, Mary sits for 2 long-form interviews where she dishes on everything. So we did an episode on there's a connective hyperlink that we didn't follow through because there wasn't enough room for it in the episode. But the general question of when a liar who's famous for lying tells you the story of the behind the scenes of the real story of the liar, can you trust the liar? And there's a relevant example that felt like It felt like too big of a thing for us to talk about.
Well, because we're gonna do it in another episode.
Oh, well, I was not going to acknowledge that. I was going to
Okay.
point to the past, the existing Modern Rogue episode in which we discussed the issue. But
Yeah.
but
No, yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did want to mention, just as we get into the actual her story, a lot of other places, if you've come across this story, or when you come across the story, if you're fascinated by it and you read more about it, is, in my opinion, people tend to neglect Elizabeth Worrell, who we essentially spent the entire first episode on, because I think she's a fascinating character, and we really wanted to give her due in this story. But then also just kind of how unstable England is at the time. They're coming out of the Napoleonic Wars. They spent a lot of money on it. The economy is shaky. The world is a little wobbly, which I think a lot of people can probably relate to kind of these days. We're kind of constantly warring, but, we had the gigantic inflationary spike. And that's a lot of what, they're kind of dealing with here, where it's not that the economy is bad per se. It is just that there's a lot of folks that aren't living the lives that they wanted to. And so that kind of plays into not only how all of our players in this world are acting, but also how the world reacts to the story as we go forward. But that story is...
Oh, that was my tee up. They're mostly the same accounts, and many of the core details get verified later by independent reporting. Now, I'm not going to claim that what you're about to hear is the real story. I wish I knew exactly how that went. But this is the tale of Mary Baker, as told by Mary Baker. Mary was a poor girl, the daughter of a shoemaker. Like many girls who grew up in her station, it was expected that she would support her family by way of the same kind of jobs anybody could get. And for her, a relatively well-behaved, relatively good-looking young woman, that would mean housemaid. Now, the good news for Mary is that she does have a good disposition. She's bright, likable, excited, bit of a tomboy. She learns to swim at one of her early jobs. But then something changes in her. When she's 15, rheumatic fever hits, and her family says there's a shift in her temperament. Now, is this really a shift in temperament or just puberty? We'll never know. But we do know that there's one moment. Can we, if you were going to place a bet, editorially, I don't think we wanted to get into the weeds on that
Is
one.
Mary Baker really crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she's pretty, I think she's, well, the question is she crazy, or is she truly somebody that is like an eccentric? Like there's a few things that are kind of different with our world than this world. One of them is that, like, now being an eccentric is like almost like expected in like a post
I would
baby
say,
boom.
Yeah, nowadays, post baby boom. When my generation, a little bit older than yours, grew up with like early indoctrination, free to be you and me. The first message was it's okay to be unique and special in some way, and then that very quickly morphs into what? Something wrong with you? Why aren't you unique and precious and special?
One of the biggest things we didn't go into in either of these episodes is the class element of it, where part of the soft bigotry in this is that, like, Caraboo shows up speaking a made-up language that is good enough that people are like, wow, I don't know that. That means it's impressive and exciting. She's foreign, despite the fact that she's looks as white as hell. But, like, that's great. It certainly couldn't be a poor girl lying, because this is way too good for the poors. The poors are very dumb, and you can tell a poor from the way that they walk and the way that they act. And the reason why we didn't get into it is, number one, it's hard to tell a story about class between America and England because we just have, it's Linux and Mac OS. Like there's just two different ways of looking at society, and it's hard to convey what something is in England and have them not be offended. It's hard to understand it from the point of view of an American, where it's like, we see people go from very poor to very rich all the time. And like, sure, there are enclaves of blue bloods that are like, never will somebody live on my block that hasn't been here for a million years. But in England, that's a lot more entrenched into the power structures in a way that America has a folklore that is against that. But part of that folds into it is that like Mary Baker is an old school eccentric. Like she's willing to risk her entire life, to overturn her entire life. She's willing to suffer so she can do things that are interesting to her. And that is anathema to society, and it's anathema to her family. And that's something that, like, you know, when you've got parents taking their kids out to get their first tattoo at like 16, and then you take a picture and put it on Facebook and your grandma thumbs up, like, we're not living in that world anymore. Like we're in the live your dreams era. So like we're encouraging our kids to do crazy things, where here, as you're about to hear, that was not the case for Mary Baker. And they might have been finding reasons to explain why it was she was the way she was.
Yeah. And a thing that we weren't there for, but that we're reading the tea leaves on, and it comes through in our version of the story, is unspoken is the status-seeking cloud of upper crust people who, at first, they're all, you know, sure, they're very interested in the strange language this girl speaks. Unspoken is, this is a chance for them to be ahead of everyone else by being closer to the new novel. Oh, you don't know about sure, spare me your Polynesian women. I found an alabaster-skinned girl from a country you've never heard of. And of course, when somebody rides that novelty and that status up, then, you know, they have a face-saving, they have to come up with a face-saving move when we get to a moment like this. Shortly after, that will change Mary's life forever. While working as a housemaid, she makes enough money to go into town and buy a beautiful white dress. She brings it back to her family to show it off, but she's greeted not with just hostility, but outright anger. How would a girl like you, from this background, get your hands on something that fine? There's no good answer. Either you spent money that could have gone to this family on something you didn't really deserve, or you stole that dress, at which point you're bringing suspicion and dishonor on all of us. Or, and this might be the worst, you're sleeping with one of those men at your job, and he foolishly showers you with gifts like this. With the most prized possession Mary has ever had lying wrinkled and crumpled on the floor, she gets beaten by her father with a belt.
Had to stop myself from putting belt
And for the first
sound
time-
effects there.
to make it too real.
Whap, whap.
Oi, girl, you bring
just-
shame upon us.
Yeah, there were a few things that I kind of stopped myself because it's an emotionally resonant moment, and I didn't want to undercut it, but also Brian does a great tut tut, like tut you beep beep. It's a great you have a great tut tut.
Time in what will become her defining act for the rest of her life, Mary runs away.
Ooh, actually, wait, one more thing.
Yep.
And we didn't really go into this mostly because it's a question that we don't have an answer to. And this is the second episode where you want to give a lot of answers. But since we're in the behind the scenes DVD commentary here, listen repeatedly to all the moments with a missing man. There's a lot of Mary Baker that people are pretty sure there's a dude around the corner. that just never shows up. And either she's just that girl and it was just that era where she's too ambitious. Again, it's the soft bigotry of, well, you wouldn't be able to do this unless there was a guy there. But we really didn't have enough to answer. There's no real definitive answer of like, was there really a dude? Was she sleeping with somebody at her job and that's who gave her the dress? So we didn't want to just shrug emoji and just be like, oh, decide in your head, but also connect that to where the Princess Caraboo stuff starts, where there's a random sailor who's like, yep, I understand the language. She's a princess, amazing person, and then just leaves and is never seen again. Like there's a lot of question marks when it comes to the absent men in Mary Baker's life, as you are going to hear throughout this.
And no shortage. Wherever there's a gap, there's somebody who wants to show up to speculate what might be there. And another thread that could have expanded forever is a meta commentary on how present tense, this podcast, that story, this author all has their own take on stuff. But instead, we just sort of allude to them.
Yeah.
Now she's on the road. No family, no structure to go back to. She immediately becomes a beggar. She sleeps in lodging when she can afford it, and in roadside barns when she can't. It's a lonely life, and one that oftentimes doesn't feel worth living. And so poor, hungry, and sick, one day Mary decides she's had enough. She's going to hang herself. She wraps a rope around her neck, throws it over a tree branch, and just as she's secured the rope and is ready to end it all, she hears the voice of God. God tells her that suicide is a sin and that she'll not find the kingdom of heaven if she goes through with what she's about to do. And so she doesn't. She loses her nerve, begins trudging ever more wrecked down that long road. It's then, coated in shame, that she meets a man walking the highway. Someone with kind eyes who immediately takes pity upon her and gives her 5 shillings. Mary puts it all together. Her desire to kill herself, God's warning against it, her decision to refrain, and then, finally, a sign from God himself that she was on the right path because of the charity of a stranger. And the signs keep coming. When she arrives in the next town, there's an organization designed to help the indigent. They bring her in, they tell her they can facilitate her return home. She doesn't have to live as a runaway anymore. Mary agrees, and then vanishes before sunrise, back on the road. This is the continued pattern of Mary Baker. She can never really get too low, but she's never going to go back to what she left behind. Instead, she moves forward. Next up, London. Mary finally finds the big city and immediately falls ill. She's taken to a London workhouse and then eventually a fever ward. The treatments are medieval: scalding baths, wet cupping, doctors who cut into her skin to bleed her from the back of the head. During her time in the fever ward, Mary repeatedly asked the doctor for permission to go outside, hit the yard, get some fresh air. The doctor said, "You're too weak, but you could go down if you could carry this tea kettle from the fire all the way to the end of the ward." Now, some people debate whether or not the doctor knew that the kettle was filled with scalding hot water, but Mary was unable to carry it to the end of the ward, fell, the hot water spilled onto her, and she burned herself. That accident kept her in bed for another month. She slowly recovers and persuades the authorities to please don't send.
The doctor swears he didn't know, for the record. Like that's something that kind of gets brought up, but for just in defense of the doctor swore he didn't know, but also it's yeah. Anyway.
There also, I mean, whether he knew or not, there is an archetype of somebody who precociously keeps wandering into mistakes. Like, let's say the doctor didn't know. There's an alternate, very close world in which she would communicate saying, I'm sorry, do you want, this is filled with scalding hot water.
Yeah.
Are you telling me to carry this? But then there are people who just whoopsie doodle go forward and because they have blinders on to moments like that. And then something happens. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, who knows whether or not it's because there was a reporter asking him the question as opposed to just him dealing with, essentially homeless people that are coming into this fever ward. But yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to make that. There we go. If we're in the
shouts
DVD.
out to the estate of
Shout
the
out to the
descendants.
doctor at the fever ward in 1817. Big ups. By the way, Jay Peter in the YouTube chat says I'd love to get this on the commentary RSS feed. We'll put this up on the Patreon. Maybe that would make sense if we did that as a Patreon thing. But yeah, thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, these could live that way. Okay. Instead, a clergyman takes responsibility for her, writes to her parents, finds her work in the city. Mary does write home, claiming that she's working in London for a fabulously wealthy family, and soon she'll be traveling the world as a housemaid. Mary finds the bohemian aspect. I just want to shouts out to that statement. Traveling the world as a housemaid, the glamorous life of a picker-upper. Although that is a real thing at that time.
For her, like there is this kind of unspoken motivator for Mary to show up her family, and not in a way like in America, like in a modern sense, it'd be like a literal "F you, Dad, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z." And here she's like, "No, I'm gonna prove that I can do what you think I couldn't do. Like I can live in the finest clothes and travel the world and do X, Y, and Z." Because she is hardworking and ambitious, but also she's lying. So there's another theme, a repetition on a theme.
Aspects of London, positively enchanting. This is nothing like Devonshire. And it's certainly a lot more glamorous than the miserable road it took to get here. Mary lives next door to Jewish neighbors. She becomes fascinated by their customs, their food, and their language. One day, she finds out that there's to be a Jewish wedding. She asks her employers if she can go. She's denied. She tells some lies, and she attends the wedding anyway. When she's found out, she leaves again. Next up, she stays with a friend who does embroidery with feathers, and she sketches out her next adventure. It's at this point that Mary becomes fascinated with the Magdalene Hospital, a charity and reformatory home for fallen women, aka prostitutes. But they're on the straight and narrow now. They're reforming. Mary sees them around town and wonders, why do all these nuns seem to be about my age? There's something about them, these striking young peers in deliberately drab clothing. That's a group Mary wants to be a part of. Now this is the part where Mary herself tells two different versions of the story of exactly how she came to be part of the Magdalene Hospital. In one version, she plays dumb. She says, well, I just wanted to join and they let me in. It was only in conversation with these other girls that they started talking about, P-O-U-N-D for P-O-U-N-D Sterling. It's only when that awkward conversation came up that she discovered she didn't have the same colorful past as these girls. It was just a big misunderstanding. And Mary, for the first time, discovers the very concept of prostitution. And yet, in another version she tells the order itself that she was seduced by an older man, brought to London, and forced to turn tricks. Either way, While she's there, which one of those do you think is closer to the truth?
If I were to guess, and again, this is another one of those missing men thing that there's a mystery person on the periphery. You know, Mary's sexuality is a huge part of it. In fact, there are some characterizations of this entire story that almost entirely center around the idea that the mystery to Princess Caraboo is that she's hot and she just slept with everybody, and that's why they all believed her. My gut says that none of the players involved in any of these stories talk about her being like her like mistress or something like that, which makes me think that there's a lot more discussion about her as a sexual being than the other one. So my guess is that she's lying about being turned out.
I think so too. I think that that's the kind of story. If you fear being ostracized or kicked out of a group, you say whatever the words are that causes that to go away. And again, it's like that scalding hot water thing. It's like, really, you join the order, not at all knowing that they're reformed prostitutes. But then again, really, you assume that this doctor was saying, pick up this near boiling water and carry it. I think there is a type of person that I feel like a lot of us have met who somehow does kind of Mr. Magoo their way through that stuff.
No, in my mind, at least, Mary plays the country dumb act a lot more than she is actually Jar Jar Binksing her way through a lot of this stuff. And I think she knows damn well that these are ex-whores. I think that she's curious enough. She's going to ask questions about things. And I think it's also telling that she's like, what? You pay for what? Like, and then also she's in the same breath like, oh yeah, no, an older guy picked me up on the road and he made me have sex for money all the way down here. And now he's doing it all the time and I ran away. In fact, strikingly similar to another story she tells. It like the Princess Caraboo story itself. It's almost like the dime store version of what becomes the grand cinematic universe later, that she is this bystander to another story, when in reality I think she's the one who's kind of turning the crank of her own existence.
Yeah.
Behaves well. Eventually, she asks for permission to leave and receives it. A few weeks later, she returns in better clothes to say hi to her old friends again. But by now, London seems boring. Mary returns back to the road. She disguises herself as a man at this point, so she could get better, higher paying jobs. But while she's on the road, she's robbed by highwaymen. Finding out that boy Mary was boy broke, they do the only sensible thing and recruit her into the gang. The first thing any new gang member needs to learn is how to fire a pistol. So there she stands, for the first time in her life, about to pull the trigger of a real gun. And when it fires, it's so loud, she screams. Screams like a girl. The highwaymen realize they're being reverse tootsied, so they go to the gang leader, who makes her swear on a sword not to betray them. And then they let her go. And then she fell in with a group of gypsies. They told her, you'd fit in so well with us, but alas, you cannot join because of reasons. Gypsy reasons. Okay, hold on. How much of any of this is true? Gypsy reasons. What's next? She joins the Transformers? Are we just getting Carabooed again? Look, this is where the whole story of Mary Baker gets just too slippery for my tastes. Remember, we're listening to the same Mary Baker retell her story to multiple different people. The reporters working on this stuff, they found some evidence for some of it, but not all.
All right, can we take a moment and celebrate the what's that on your shirt that you pulled off? Like, in the production, it is so good to have your mind like, you're like, Caraboo, liar, liar, liar. Can't believe her. Finally, let's get
The
down.
truth.
Let's get down to the real stuff. Oh, yes, and this and dissecting of these two stories that she told both. Which of these two stories that she... Yeah, it's magician's choice all over this.
Yeah.
Like, maybe this version of what she said is true, or maybe this version of what she said isn't true. And it really is, when you get to that third beat with magic gypsy reasons that she can't be in there, and then the music building on it, and take a moment to notice it's the same theme back here.
This is the part where Mary herself tells two different joined an awkward conversation came up that
And then,
either way, while she's there, she behaves well. London's seeing jobs. But while she's on the road,
builds
she's
up.
about to pull the
builds
trigger.
up.
As they're being reverse
Builds
tootsied.
up.
And then she fell in with a group of gypsies. They told her, you'd fit in so well with us, but alas, you cannot join because of reasons. Gypsy reasons. Okay, hold on. How much of any of this is true? Gypsy reason.
and then the chorus comes in, and then Brian,
nanas.
who's the one that was seducing you down the path, is suddenly like, "What? How did we get here? What? Who did this?"
I think that was really the one element that we wanted to nail the most was, you need to bleed out all of her being a liar to where we're about to go after this. And like, it needs to get ridiculous and it needs to get comical. A Lion King opening. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because after we were already working on this, that "Hey There, Mr. Jumbo" song went viral. But like that's like a similar idea to what I was trying to go for production wise. Is a little bit of the Paul Simon Graceland era, like just random like chanting, like what feel. I'm not saying it's random; it's African chanting or whatever. But like, but that idea. And to be at that level of like story, that the story gets so ridiculous. I will also say that part of, I think, what for me in helping shape this was trying to build the mental model of who Mary actually was. As we understand, she is lying about being taken in by a boy gang of bandits, right? It is the most kind of like homeschooled horse girl version of that lie. And I will say that probably the closest that the phrase gang rape has ever come into possibly being on this podcast was in that version, because like, at least as I understand highwaymen in the early 19th century, if they were to come upon somebody that was alone and as attractive as Mary Baker was in this moment, they wouldn't make her swear on a sword and then be like, anyway, on your way, keep going with your adventures, write to us. Like,
Yeah, swear, don't you betray us.
yeah, there would have been other things that probably would have happened. It's a dark, dark world. And so that's where it's like, you almost get an element of innocence out of her lies. Like her lies kind of tell you a little bit about who she is. And that's probably one of them. But yeah, that was, there's two kind of escalating theme things. One of them's in the leech stuff at the very beginning where you're dealing with the same persistent beat and then filigrees over top of it. And then this Magdalene order, then highwaymen, and then finally the gypsies for gypsy reasons is the most ridiculous. But like these escalating or differentiations of variations on a theme, which I created with magic if you're going to be mad about it.
Yeah.
What's next? She joins the Transformers. Are we?
I really did. The joins of the Transformers I thought was a really good note because if you speak Marvel Comics, there was enough, Transformers meet whatevers and stuff out there.
Yeah, no, I will say this is another, like, one of those things where it's like, I knew I wanted to build it up, but I also knew I needed to have, that Brian needed to sell exasperation. And Brian, great tut-tutting, great exasperation in these episodes.
Caraboo again. Look, this is where the whole story of Mary Baker gets just too slippery for my tastes. Remember, we're listening to the same Mary Baker retell her story to multiple different people. The reporters working on this stuff, they found some evidence for some of it, but not all. Yes, she did work in London. Yes, she did go to the hospital, and yeah, the treatments were brutal. She did fall in with the Magdalens, but all the good stuff? There's no evidence she tried to kill herself. No evidence that she fell in with gypsies. No evidence that she fell in with a boy gang who decided to make her swear on a sword. But there's something that sticks out the more you look at the Caraboo story. You notice when Mary lies, when she tells the truth, and when she wants to avoid the subject altogether. The hallmarks of creating any false persona are simple. Number one, hide your weaknesses. Don't give them anything to scare them away. Number two, accentuate your strengths. Give them something to like. But most importantly, number three, create broad surfaces, bland areas where people can project and see themselves. When she lies, Mary's usually lying about clues to her working class upbringing. When she's telling the truth, it's usually when she has an interesting story to tell. But notice that she omits some of the more tragic elements of her life. That tells us something. And there's nothing Mary Baker wants to talk less about than her son. She eventually goes back to London. And it's there that she meets a gentlemanly-looking man. They begin an affair. His last name is Baker, and that's why, for the rest of her life, she takes the surname. According to Mary, he leaves for France. He says he's going to send for her. But of course, he never does. There is, though, one Baker who arrives in London. John Baker, Mary's firstborn son, born February 11th, 1816. Like everything else in Mary Baker's world, the trip to the hospital is strange. Even the day her son is born, the family that Mary's working for gets her a cab to go to the hospital. But Mary tells the driver to go the exact opposite direction. She says drop her off. She'll walk the rest of the way. In the hubbub after the Princess Caraboo fiasco, journalists interviewed both the driver and the family. Both of them say they believe that the father of the child was right there in London, and that's who Mary was trying to rendezvous with right before birth. But Mary confirms none of this. Mary gets to the hospital, gives birth to the baby, and immediately realizes she can't do this. Mary gives the baby up to a foundling hospital, and sadly, the child dies before the end of the year. It's at this point that Mary's life becomes even more erratic. If she was listless before the death of her son, she's now darker, weirder, despondent. This is according to both herself and the family she worked with. At work, she literally starts setting things on fire and loses her job. And it's at this point in the story that Mary's memory continues to go.
The setting things on fire to 21st century ears sounds just so bonkers. But I think anybody, age 25 and under, at the age of 51, I barely have memories of a time when cigarette smoke was everywhere and fires and real candles were used all the time. Back in that time, how many mishaps must there have been? This would have been a venal sin at most to okay, well, a fire happened. Was it intentional or not? That'd be weird to do it on purpose. But then again, she's pretty weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess in my view of it, this was like almost a more grievous sin. Like if somebody thought you were intentionally lighting something on fire with that level of construction, and you don't have a modern fire department or the ability to communicate to people in the same kind of way, like a fire can like ruin your stuff. I mean, a fire can ruin things now, and we live in a world that is largely designed to prevent it. Back then, it was even more so. I almost wonder whether or not it was
a greater sin because everybody knew what you were playing with.
Well, it's like all right, we know, at least by her own description, that she has had suicidal tendencies in the past. Whether or not she's playing that up, people rarely joke about that unless they've at least thought about it on some level. Is this another version of that she's just like, well, everything sucks, the world sucks, why don't I just go out in a literal blaze of glory? I don't know. It was enough that people were like, you're weird. Stop lighting my shit on fire. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, hazy. Nobody's really sure what she does in those intervening months between when her son dies and her final arrival in Bristol. Some people believe that during this time, Mary really did go to mainland Europe, specifically to France. Maybe she met back up with the father of her child. It does appear that by the time she gets back to England, she's got money. She goes back to Devonshire. She lends money to her parents. She sends a coach with all of her clothes up ahead to Bristol and tells anybody that'll listen that she's going to sail for the Indies. Which brings us to the beginning of the transformation. Mary Baker will slowly shed her skin. And what will emerge is something very, very different. At least to the eyes of everybody she'll meet from this point on. By the time she gets to Bristol, whatever money she'd had long gone. And so she begins begging again. But begging in Bristol isn't like it was in London. According to one book, it's while she's begging on the docks that she notices that sailors coming in are much more likely to interact with prostitutes who have foreign accents. It's from this she got the idea of putting on exotic airs. Pinching some of the little bits of culture that she had picked up along the way and creating a new persona for herself, she wraps a shawl around her head, like a turban, with the feathers and embroidery that she'd learned from her friend in London. She remembered how exotic the foreign language of that Jewish family had felt. The problem is, every time she speaks in a foreign language, she meets a native. At first, she pretends to be French.
There's like a temptation when you're building something like that to be like, you don't want to get too usual suspects where it's like every little piece connects, but you want to do enough of it so it's interesting and exciting, because otherwise you would just be doing a list and then being like, member?
Well, and I think that there's a certain amount of it that needs to be there so that you can squint and see the same shape with two very different stories, because we really are, in part one and part two, telling the exact same story. Although one is through one lens and the other's through another lens, they end up being the same shape, and then neither one of them turn out to be
exactly
believable.
Fortunately, Bristol's far too savvy for that. Too many servants trying to speak French to her. So she flips to Spanish. But remember, port town. Too many people speak Spanish in Bristol. So she solves the problem in two ways. First, geographically. The farther out from Bristol, the less of a chance of native Spaniards or the French. But just to be safe, she also speaks in a language nobody can bust. One she's made up.
Which, by the way, we don't bring this up, but that rings very, very true, where it's like if the made-up language was a defense mechanism to be unbustable and permanently exotic, then that makes it very unambiguous that a grift is happening when the Portuguese sailor recognizes it and like basically calls her out in a grifter code kind of way.
Yeah, and ultimately we just didn't really have we didn't have a platform. There was an initial version of this episode where that was going to be the big takeaway, was we were going to like essentially answer the missing man question by saying, here's an example of a missing man, the guy that sets this entire Princess Caraboo thing, because she's kind of just an eccentric indigent right up until a guy says, yep, I can speak that language. She's a princess. She got captured by pirates. See you later forever in all historical record. Deuces. Like, is he in league with her? Is he another passing person who's like, oh, I'm just going to set up in the hobo code like somebody who's, needs something? I don't know. We don't know. We didn't wind up doing it. Mostly because I think the story, ultimately, the narrative became, there's one episode on Worrell and there's one episode on Mary. That's our story here. If you include a missing man, that's kind of a shrug and like, here's what we believe, then it takes away from the Mary part of it. And so that's where we kept it.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable just believing that this is grifters passing in the night doing a solid, because I've seen enough close to that experience, even in my own life. Like, we opened this very series with the white van speaker scam, which I encountered. I don't think we told this story. Like 3 years later, once I understood the scam, I saw a bunch of kids doing it, and I'm like, you guys are doing it wrong. Like, where's the magazine? You got to prove it. Also, try to indicate that maybe they're stolen and whatever. Buy, and it's like, let's say they went on to be the world's greatest grifters. Their version of the Princess Caraboo story would be like, wait, you just met a magician scammer who gave you tutelage and then left? Yeah, that happened. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Crap. What we were just at?
The Portuguese.
No. Where were we at in the episode?
Oh, we're at the part where, well, here, let's see.
And with each step farther out of town, nobody can bust.
Well, one thing that we didn't connect because the narrative wouldn't allow it. She's with the family at this point that winds up busting her. So she does have this relationship. She's not just begging on the street. She does work with this family, and she's doing the language for the daughter. And that's what winds up busting her. We were kind of like, as the episode was coming together, it's like, she's in Bristol, she's doing the language, she sees the whores, like, now it's another whore thing. So it's like, everything was kind of moving, that it's like, yeah, that happens in between, but we didn't want to be like, and then also she became a housemaid again, and that's eventually what busted her. It's like, she got busted. We know, at the beginning, she's busted, so whatever. There we go.
Yeah. Also, boy, it is a chore to be able to figure out the right pastiche of vagaries to accurately portray a sentiment without ever busting ourselves on specifics that are differing from the historical record as it's understood.
Yeah, we try to do our best to never say anything incorrect that we know of, right? I mean, some things might be incorrect, but we don't know it. And at the same time, we want to make very cinematic versions of these stories. We want to make, very campfire, late night at the bar versions of these that are bursting with life and excitement. So sometimes you got to shave things a little bit, but I would say that's like really what separates the podcast from something like Hardcore History or something like that. That is like much more like the most electric textbook that you could ever have. We're not in that vein. We're in the like, we want you to remember every inch of this so you can retell it.
Yeah. Like, you could listen to a Hardcore History episode and then take a test and then pass it.
Yes.
You will not pass a test after.
Hopefully you remember cool things.
Correct.
You remember fun moments. But yeah, this is not, we will take things out of an episode. We will take facts,
allow me to
extraneous
amend that.
facts out.
Allow me
Yeah.
to amend that. Like a hardcore history episode, you will not be foolproof. You will not be scam proof. Like you can listen to a hardcore history episode of the Trojan horse thing, and then you will fall for the Trojan horse because it'll have a different face. Whereas World's Greatest Con, you will smell the rhythms and you will not. So I guess you will pass the test.
Yeah.
Life. You're welcome.
One she's made up. And with each step farther out of town, she begins adding eccentricities. Her outfit, her language, her movements. What was an aura becomes an affect. What was a lilt becomes a personality. The stranger she gets, the more she piques natural curiosity. Until finally, she reaches the whorls. To be honest, she's as surprised as any of us that she continues to get away with this performance, but for a million very sensible reasons, she just can't stop. Who would want to end this level of pampering, this level of adoration? The more questions they ask, the more she just turns her real story of tragedy into something more cinematic. The fever ward where she was tortured becomes Tapaboo's pirate ship. The scars from the intentional bleeding become Javasu tribal markings. Her stories start opaque, but get more and more detailed. Eventually, in one of those moments when she's trying to gain Worrell's trust, Mary confesses she has a son she would love to see again. For Princess Caraboo, the boy was an ocean away. But for Mary, the boy was dead months ago. This is a bit that people just continue to yes and. And true to her theme, when the attention grows too bold, she tries to bolt again and again. But what keeps it together is not any kind of cleverness from Caraboo. It's not her story. It's not her middling performance. It's Elizabeth Worrell. And this might be the true tragedy of this story. Elizabeth Worrell and Mary Baker are two lost souls who desperately need each other. Elizabeth Worrell never had a daughter. She wants to dote on somebody young and exciting. She wants to give a daughter everything she could possibly want. Mary Baker is a working class girl, too eccentric for a real job. And now she's found somebody who adores her for just those attributes. And yet, because of the exact circumstances that brought them together, they can no longer be in each other's lives. Think of it like this, now that we know the full story. Mary initially left home because she brought home a dress and got beaten for it, while Elizabeth Worrell brought in the finest tailors in all of Bristol to sew her any dress she could imagine. When Mary ran away from home, her family never chased her. When she ran from the fever ward, no one chased her. When she ran from the Magdalene order, no one chased her. Whenever she ran away, only Elizabeth Worrell tried to find her.
If I might say so, this was that theme. Ultimately, obviously, that's like the big landing point of the episode of our 2-episode series. I'm very proud that we landed on that. No other version of this story that we have seen kind of hits on that. And I think it's, if they were to make a new movie, that would be the anchored theme is not only a connection between these two, but the betrayal and Mary and Worrell from totally different worlds, both having this empty spot in their lives for somebody who's like the other.
It also is, I believe, a satisfying and believable and realistic, possibly 100% accurate reason for so many of the questions. People are
Yep.
like, but why would you let it go so far? What's the grift? And the grift is quite simply when you have two semi-broken humans who find each other, they get often spun up and things go too far in a direction. And in this case, you know, if the story weren't this good, it wouldn't have attracted this many eyeballs and it wouldn't have elevated this high.
I mean, to go to a modern example, you got a lot of these pig butchering scams, which if you are not aware is you take in a lonely world, you have somebody who pays a lot of attention to you. Now, this is for money. They are scamming you into giving them money and you eventually do it. But in story after story that you hear, victims of this scam, yes, the money's bad. Yes, they miss the money. Yes, they feel dumb that they gave the money. But to a person, the thing they miss the most is the companionship. They miss the heartbroken element of like, oh, this person I loved is gone. Like, whether or not they were real, it doesn't matter that they were real. It was real to you, damn it. Like, and I think that especially in these kind of situations, this is a weird one because there is a question of exactly how much Mary was extorting. We don't really think the episode comes to the conclusion that we don't really think all that much. Everything was just kind of freely given to her. But still, I think that's a huge part of where Worrell is and where we're about to get back to is like, I loved you. I had love for you. I wanted a daughter. You were my daughter. You were my beautiful, eccentric, exotic daughter. And I wanted to live vicariously through you in the way that every parent wants to live vicariously through their children. And you were a fake. And that's fucking heartbreaking. Sorry for cursing.
It does. I don't know. When I think about our increasingly isolated world, it almost makes me picture a near strange thing, let's say 5-10 years, where with eyes open, somebody decides to, instead of engage in a relationship with a single person who you never know if they might break your heart, you instead employ a team and you sign a 10-year contract where the team is going to come together to be an avatar for you, to fulfill all of your fantasies and encourage you to work out and encourage you to, they're going to have a percentage of everything you make, but it'll be explicit all of the implicit natures of marriage, only with a like in the service of avoiding scams that provide the service for no charge and then pig butcher you. I don't know.
I don't know if I follow that one, but I'm
I'm
curious to sign up for your newsletter.
It's a distraction. It's a Brian Galaxy brain thought. We'll come back to it anyway.
Which brings us back to that portrait studio one more time. Caraboo has just been exposed. The princess is not a princess. The language is not a language. The island, not an island. Caraboo needs to go. But how? In the days after the scheme is revealed, it becomes an all-encompassing story. The aristocracy focuses on the society figures who bought it and now are humiliated. The lower class version believes that Mary Baker is some kind of Robin Hood hero. Some begin calling Mary the greatest actress of her generation. Others fixate on salacious details like the Magdalene Order and just assume that she slept her way to the top. Everybody has something to focus on. This complicates pretty much every option for Worrell. Throw her in jail? If you jail her, she becomes a gathering place for a rebellion. Free Caraboo will be the rallying cry. Kill her? Even worse, if you execute her, that makes her a martyr. So that leaves exile. Australia has been a popular destination for troublemakers. Britain had been shipping convicts there for nearly 30 years, and the system was just accelerating. 1,000 to 2,000 people a year are being sent halfway around the world. Eventually, more than 160,000 convicts are sent to Australia from England. Now, the bar to ship somebody down to Australia is pretty low, but not so low that you could get away doing it just because some rich woman got embarrassed. Elizabeth needs this story to go away, and that means cutting off reporters' access to it. If Mary ends up in Australia, then that means Elizabeth has only one role, and that's victim. But if Mary ends up in a country with less baggage, then Elizabeth gets everything. The story out of her backyard and a clean slate.
Mary, there's a ship sailing on the morning tide bound for America, and you're to be on it.
Whoa, how do we have actual audio from this time?
Oh, Ma. Here are your clothes and 20 guineas. Now, with this letter, apply to the Moravian sisters when you arrive in Philadelphia.
Thank you, Mrs. Whirlman.
Yes, to America. You hear that, poor people? She won. Happy now? Your Princess Caraboo's gonna go to Philadelphia.
She'll write to
and
me.
She'll live happily ever after.
I'd like to hear how Princess Caraboo fares in the New World.
New world. It will be a new world for me. Maybe I won't ever be coming back.
Perhaps you will one day.
And this is where most people do stop talking about Princess Caraboo.
It's a very good story. Is it true, do you think?
In fact, that's the end of the movie Princess Caraboo, made in 1994. Wait a minute. This is the second time we've done an episode about a movie that came out in 94. I guess we just love 1994 movies. But that is not the full story of Princess Caraboo. If you want to believe that Mary Baker went to America and lived the rest of her life happily ever after, by all means, do so. That's a great story, but it's not the truth. Mary does arrive in America, and she finds a new job to be Princess Caraboo, live on stage. The show premieres, and initially, she's a hit. Once the press in America hears about what happened back in the UK, streams of people come in to see the one and only Princess Caraboo. But after a few shows...
Oh, and we don't have time to go into it on this, but she had... there's a number of linguists who are really interested in the world of made-up languages. And so in order to have something to say or interesting, basically what we've experienced is she goes out, she really tries to make the show about her carefully thought out language and stuff. Nobody really cares. It's just a proxy to...
She's famous when she arrives.
Right.
The story of Princess Caraboo has made it to America, so she gets a lot of attention immediately because she's this kind of like curiosity.
Something feels wrong. I mean, yeah, the crowds are coming, but they're not there to admire her. They're there to laugh. Laugh at, not with. They're there to use her as a proxy for those rich upper crust bastards back in England. Remember, America's only a few decades removed from the end of the Revolutionary War, and the War of 1812 just finished. The mood of Americans is decidedly unkind towards the British. They initially loved Mary because Mary humiliated the British elites, and only because she humiliated them. And eventually, as the laughs begin to get a little too sharp, Mary gets weary. The act wears off. There's only so many times you could tell the same story. And it's not like she has a whole bunch of crazy characters to roll out. Nobody really wants to learn her made-up language.
By the way, how great would it be if in a Sideways universe, she does develop like a retinue of characters, goes on to become like a Robin Williams sensation in America? And we have like
Mary Baker Studios in Los Angeles. Like,
has become sad. She winds up staying at her American manager's house, living there. And then a novel new thought comes to her. Instead of pressing reset yet again, what if, with simplicity and humility, she got down to living an honest life, back to the broken mess of Bristol.
Maybe I won't ever be coming back.
And so Mary runs home.
Perhaps she will one day. She will one day. She will.
Which
Do you want to talk a bit about the unexplored version of this with Phoebe Cates?
Yeah, we were gonna do a whole thing on Phoebe Cates. That was kind of like what we call it a know some shit segment, where we kind of like take a beat from our main story. It didn't fit just because like there's kind of a few fits and starts to this one. Like it's like, okay, there's a decision. Take a pause. Here's the real story. Just kidding, she's lying. Here's the real story, but with some omissions. Okay, we're back to the thing. And so by the time that we get to her going to America, we're like, there's more to this story. But first, Phoebe Cates. But the whole Phoebe Cates thing that I think is really interesting is, so Princess Caraboo comes out in 1994. It's Phoebe Cates' last movie as a leading woman. It's a bit of a mess of a movie. It's not great, but it's partially not great, despite the fact that it's like a perfect role for her, because she's pregnant. So like part of what you would want if you were to do a movie now of Princess Caraboo is you'd want her to be this kind of like young, sexy thing that believably kind of like makes the whole town go crazy, because that's the most exciting version of the story. She's not able to do it because she's pregnant. Kevin Kline, her real life husband, is in the movie, but he plays the Greek manservant. He's the one who says like, it's a good story. Is it true, do you think, that you just heard? He has the most romantic chemistry with her, unsurprisingly, in the movie, despite the fact that she has like 3 other love interests, including 2 of them that are totally invented. But she then just leaves Hollywood. And it's crazy because 94 is when the rules of Hollywood kind of change. You get all these very referential, all of the 90s, think Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith, that are very referential to
it is the thing to do in 1994 that Quentin Tarantino just plucked from the forgotten bin of Hollywood, one John Travolta, and set his career on fire. Phoebe Cates could be entering the next act of doing all of that, but instead,
and she's not even old, right? Like she could just be a Kevin Smith leading lady. She could have been just a Quentin Tarantino leading lady, and she's just gone. And the reason
in the vein of Pam Grier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and she's even younger, so I don't know. Yeah, more like Patricia Arquette or something like that, a Jackie Brown, but similar idea, right? Like there's a role for her in what Hollywood became that is obsessed with the 80s and obsessed with the late 70s, of which she was a big part of. But she just becomes a mom. Her and Kevin Kline have the 2 kids. The second kid is what she's pregnant with on Princess Caraboo. And they decide that one of them's going to be an actor and the other one is going to be present for the kids. And at least based on our initial research, we didn't like look up the deep history on how the kids are doing, but none of them went to jail. They both seem to be
out of the headlines.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
They both seem to be good, well-adjusted people. So it's a happy ending, but the idea of Princess Caraboo, the end of that movie is Princess Caraboo going off to America. You don't find out what happens when she gets there. And that's really Phoebe Cates sailing into the mist. And that's essentially a wrap for her as a leading lady.
Well, and as we heard in a cursory glance, she ran a boutique in New York City, which meant that people would come into a tiny little shop and they're like, excuse me, are you Phoebe Cates? And they're like, Phoebe Cates, who I imprinted upon when you went topless in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, that Phoebe Cates? And she's like, yes, can I get you something? And there was something so inspiring about that humility, that growth, and the fact that it harmonized with the story of Mary Baker eventually, and as best we know, because again, we can't know the whole story, but she stayed out of the headlines after that. Congratulations, better than most.
When I lived in New York City, I had heard stories that Phoebe Cates now runs a gallery and she's a bit of a kook. That was what I heard back in the early aughts.
The local story, the local version of that is Shelley Duvall lived in Wimberley, and she was a bit of a local kook.
Yeah, I mean, look, actresses, they're kind of crazy, but but then it also wound up dovetailing with where we're about to go.
Oh man, BioCow says, I've been to a shop in Portland owned by Joseph Stalin's granddaughter.
Nice.
Holy moly.
Well, for a while, Linda Tripp used to run a Christmas ornament shop where you could just go and buy Christmas ornaments by Monica Lewinsky, former compatriot and serial recorder Linda Tripp.
That's amazing.
Which brings us to the real end of our story, the one that rarely gets mentioned. Mary Baker, Princess Caraboo, returns to Bristol, the very same town where she was briefly royalty. This time, she just wants to do honest work. She gets angry, irritated when people bring up the whole Caraboo thing. By this point, the Worrells are gone. The bank is folded. Elizabeth and Samuel are dead, both having had their reputations and fortunes squandered. The Knoll, long since cleared out, rented to somebody else. Mary lives out her days, selling medical-grade leeches to a hospital in town. How's that for punishment? She goes from custom tailors, making her whatever dresses she wants, feeding her whatever food she could dream up, academics and aristocrats hanging on her every made-up word, to now, sitting there, hip deep in a bog, letting leeches attach themselves to her leg so she could pull them off, put them in a jar, and sell them to the hospital. Mary once survived by attaching herself to other people's imagination. Other people then attached themselves to her story, and the story attached itself to her for the rest of her life, whether she wanted it or not. But in the end, she sells leeches. Mary's not a princess, and she certainly is not a monster. And she's only partly a fraud. She's a woman who told a story big enough to carry her across the ocean and back, and a story that good, one that spins out of control, fills the room, takes over lives. A story like that might just be the world's greatest con. This episode of World's Greatest Con was written by Justin Robert Young and me, Brian Brushwood, your humble host. The show's executive produced by Justin Robert Young. Production and research by Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Credit to Princess Caraboo, Her True Story by John Wells, which along with contemporary news articles, retrospectives, and archive video made for the bulk of our research. Support us directly and keep the world's greatest cons coming by heading on over to patreon.com/greatestcon. You'll get an ad-free feed, which I can't recommend highly enough, early access to all the good info, and of course, behind-the-scenes extras. Anyway, see you soon.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.
Oh, we didn't include the
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Do you have that one track? Can we listen to?
No.
Oh,
I didn't want to put it in there because if it's just the one track, then it's just slop.
I don't know. I loved it as you could picture it in the movie.
Yeah, but that's not how people are gonna read it.
Yeah,
they're gonna read it like, oh, listen to my thing I spent 2 seconds on.
Yeah.
If it's part of a larger thing, then it's a different thing. But it didn't feel right.
Yeah. That's great. Joey H says, this was great. I got lost in the story. Thank you very much, Joey H.
Somebody who was in Bristol said, this is that the hospital has a statue of her. So she did wind up kind of rehabilitating her reputation. I will say that was something that from at least I don't know where Brian is, but I did not want to rehabilitate Princess Caraboo's reputation. I very much wanted to kind of tell a version of the story where she was actually just kind of a bad person, because I think she did. Yeah, I don't think she was a criminal per se, but I don't think that she was a good person. I do think that she did real damage to other people that weren't her.
But
and then at the end, it's like, well, you want to know what? Like, yeah, but it felt right to redeem her at a low status. That like she spent the rest of her life repaying her debts. And so I didn't give her the one thing that's like kind of the other happy ending is that she does eventually have a daughter. And like, so you do kind of also redeem the fact that she lost her firstborn. But I didn't want to make it too saccharine. Like,
yeah.
It's like, no, we're fine ending the story with her picking leeches off her legs.
Yeah.
While people are like, weren't you Princess Caraboo? And she's like, piss off.
Enough of that. You're not as hot as I heard.
Yeah, exactly. I thought you'd be hotter.
Well, do the accent, do the language.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's hopefully people liked it. Princess Caraboo, man.
Yeah, head on over to World's Greatest Con. If you haven't, somebody out there, this is their first time experiencing this, guess what? There's a lot of really great stories. You should go back to episode 1 of season 1. Start with Operation Mincemeat and just binge the whole dang catalog.
Binge it, baby. We should do an episode about a genuinely bad person. I don't know who people would think was like the worst person that we've covered. Ponzi was pretty bad.
Oh, Sign is making a case for his pitch. I think I floated it past you. I forget the full context, but it's in the queue. Yeah, the dude who sold procedures to implant goat testicles.
Oh, yeah.
His story is legit wild.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about the episode, about doing a good World's Greatest Con episode, in my opinion, is that you almost don't want, this episode really kind of suffered for a while the problem of like too many crazy things in a row happening, because at a certain point it just becomes a list of like, you know, it's like the first couple pages of the Old Testament where it's just like, and then Gadah begat Jadah, and Jadah begat Badah.
It's like presenting Receipts, the musical.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like, if it's like crazy thing happened and then they did this, it's like, I don't know. There's like this thing with stories where if you read it and you're kind of IKEA assembling the visuals or the audio in your head, you're like, that's amazing. Oh my God. Like I took raw materials and I put them together in my brain and now I can see all these things. Where it's like, if we're presenting it and we're doing audio around it, you almost kind of have to buy into the characters before you care that these things happen. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see what's next. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. A thing that we intend to be much better about is having these things planned in advance. But shouts out to everybody who 15 minutes after an alert shows up, make sure to join us for this stuff.
Yeah, this is going live right now. How did Mary Baker become Princess Caraboo?
Oh no! Now I gotta drop everything and get Scampocalypse pointed somewhere.
Oh wait, I can delay it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll delay it.
Okay.
All right.
Good. Good. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.